everybody, and welcome to this week's Dementia Researcher Salon webinar. I'm Adam Smith, and today we're talking about something that affects, well, I was going to say almost every PhD student, but I'm going to say every PhD student, which is finding a job or job hunting after your doctorate. Finishing a PhD can feel like stepping off a cliff, I think, for many people. For years, your path was defined by deadlines and supervisors and your research project, of course. And suddenly the next step is entirely up to you. So where do you start? How do you stand out? What if you're not even sure what you want to do anymore? These are all things we'll explore today. I'm joined by two, as ever, fantastic speakers who can turn their cameras on. They're very welcome to explore this. We have the incredible Dr. Chloe Fawns-Ritchie, who's a lecturer in psychology at the University of Edinburgh. Chloe's research looks at the bidirectional relationship between cognitive function and health across the lifespan, and she puts a lot of thought into how to secure a job in academia, well beyond the interview itself. And it's the second time Chloe's joining us as well. Thank you very much for joining us, Chloe. And we have Ishita Virmani, who is a researcher at the Medical University in Innsbruck in Austria, working in regulatory science and on European projects bridging the gap between science and regulations, and with a background in toxicology as well. Together, Chloe and Ishita will share practical advice, personal experience, because we were just talking, Ishita and I, who's just finishing a PhD as well, but also has a job, so has some unique perspective to bring to this. But they're going to bring their personal experiences, ideas on how to navigate that uncertainty and identify opportunities and take confidence in your next step into dementia. Well, we hope into dementia research, but who knows? Let's explore that. As ever, if you've not joined us in the salon before, the format is quite simple. Each of our speakers will give a talk. They're both going to use slides today for 10 minutes. We'll have a little bit of a chat as well, and we'll, of course, provide you with an opportunity to ask your own questions, which you can do using the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And also, as well, if you have your own experiences to share, you're very welcome. We can invite you to turn on your camera and join us on stage and to share your own perspectives as well, if anybody would like to do that. Nobody has yet, so if you don't be shy. If you'd like to come and share your own experiences, you can, of course, just do that in the chat if you'd like, or you can join us and share those too. But do get your questions ready. And Ishita's very kindly volunteered to go first, so we rehearsed this beforehand, screen sharing. If you'd like to share your screen now, I'll stick around until that gets going. Fingers crossed. And I have some facts and figures.
Yeah, it doesn't work now, and it says could not access.
Oh, no.
Let
While
me try.
we're trying that, here are some useful stats and figures that I have prepared for exactly this eventuality of technical problems. In the UK, did you know that fewer than 50% of PhD graduates remain in academia 3 years after finishing, which I found astounding. And in fact, many funders in the UK now, particularly I know the Alzheimer's Society, are actually looking at how one of their main success metrics is not how well you finish in your PhD, but what do you do next, with a massive aim to try and retain people in dementia research, which of course means trying to improve career paths and culture and lots of things. Is there anything I can do to help, Ishita? Would you like to, if you want to email me your slides, I could share them on your behalf.
Yeah, I'm trying to upload them on Drive. Maybe it works
now. I tell you what, maybe we'll rejig the order. Chloe.
I thought that might be what you're about to ask. Let's hold on to this. Okay.
Put you on the spot as well now. Maybe Chloe can go first, and Ishita, you're very welcome to email me your slides. Do you want to try?
Yeah. So, do you see it now?
Yes, we've got that. Over to you, Ishita.
So thanks a lot for a great introduction, and thank you everyone for joining this talk. As Adam just mentioned, I'm also finishing up my PhD, but I'm also working at Medical University Innsbruck. So as you could already see, my slide title says networking your way through the post PhD job hunt. And I will walk you through some steps that I also follow and also what my mentors have suggested me. So first of all, of course, PhD is a cliff and we all have so many deadlines, so many things to do in the lab, off the lab, so many project proposals to write, so many other things to do, conferences to attend, talk to people. And then after the PhD is done, now we are like, what to do next? Where could we go next? Now you are all alone because in your PhD, your supervisor has been guiding you. So once your PhD is done, you are all alone. And sometimes you don't even know where do you want to go because opportunities are infinite. So one thing that I really like, and in any conferences or anyone I talk to, whatever advice I receive is the take home messages. Networking matters. So if you want to get a job after your PhD, do not network once you are done with your PhD, but network before. Network in conferences, network in seminars, network in webinars, network to whoever you meet, and don't be so narrow that I should only network with the people who work in dementia research because, like, you never know which field you want to go to. So, for example, my PhD is in environmental health sciences, where I worked with in vitro stuff, and now I'm doing something completely different, which is regulatory science. So, because I was networking with everyone, not only those people who were in my field, but also those people who were doing something related to my field, but also something very different from what I studied. So, networking could help you in three ways. The first one is to gain visibility. For example, if you are networking with someone and posting something on LinkedIn, then people like that post, comment on that post, so you gain visibility. Because if, for example, a CEO likes your post, then you have the visibility in the LinkedIn, and their network would also get to see it. The second one is insight. The more people you talk to, the more you know which career path you can take. For example, if you are going in an industry position, you might not even know what should you search for on LinkedIn. So whenever I'm talking to people, I always ask them, so my background is this and I want to do this. What should I search on LinkedIn? Which job positions I should look up for? And the third thing from network is support. You get so many peers and mentors for your lifetime or for that stage of the career which you are seeking an advice for. And then the job market is hidden. Not everything you think is posted on LinkedIn. If you think all the jobs are out there, that is not true. So many jobs are just inside the company and they just go through internal references. So if you don't network and talk to people, then you will not know about those jobs and keep receiving so many rejections, which is really heartbreaking. And for me, networking is like a dance. So at first, of course, you feel awkward. You don't want to make any steps. But with practice, curiosity, and a little bit of confidence, you really start enjoying it. And it's not about perfection, it's about starting to learn and starting to do it. And then there are three shifts when you start to network. The first one is from impressing to listening. And you don't have to network to people because you have something to sell, you have some skills, or you are coming from like some particular university. You can just listen to them, what they do. You can ask them what they do, how does their day to day look like, what challenges do they face on the daily basis. So that gives always a little bit of idea about the job and also about the company. And the second is second one is from one-off to ongoing. So the most common mistake that we people make while networking is just connect with someone, chat with them, have an informational interview, and then we stop talking to them, and then we really forget about them. But this is not how the networking is done. It is also somewhere about like friendship, like to keep in touch with your friends. You always talk to them, you ask them how is it going. So if you have somebody you network with, you have to stay in touch with them, ask them how are they doing, and if you applied for some job, you can always give them updates, ask if they can review your CV for this job, or if they have any tips for an interview. And the third one, which I already mentioned in my previous slide, is from narrow to expensive. You don't have to network with just people who are doing dementia research. You can also network with people who are working on Alzheimer's or other neurological disorders, or maybe somebody who is doing completely different thing but in neurology, but working in a pharma company or a chemical industry or cosmetic industry. So you always have to expand your network. And when you are doing this expanding, you can ask them if they know someone that you can talk to, if they know someone that is working in the same field that you are interested in. And trust me that so many people will always send you another contact, and that also helps you a lot. So by talking to one person, you can expand your network to 3 to 5 people. And I have contacted many people on LinkedIn, and they're very friendly, very happy to put me in touch with someone who is doing the similar thing or something even very different. And then the most important thing is overcoming fear. I know I also come from a PhD, so I also have this fear. What if I have nothing to offer? Why should that person talk to me? Why would that person reply to me? Or then another fear is, what if I contact someone on LinkedIn and that person never replies to me? So our thing is to like just keep trying, and if that person doesn't reply, it doesn't mean anything personal, but it simply sometimes mean they are really busy. So you can reach out to them again after a week or 2 weeks and see if they reply. Or some people don't even check their LinkedIn, so that is also one possibility. But very important thing is to not have this fear or imposter syndrome that, oh, I'm nothing, oh, I just did a PhD, but they are working in this company at this level, why would they talk to me? No, they would talk to you, because if you ask people what do they do, how do they look like, what is the advice they can give it to you, they feel, very special because somebody is asking them what do they do. And then, so I would close my presentation here. If finishing a PhD feels like stepping off a cliff, then think of networking as the bridge that carries you across. So this whole thing was about job hunt after PhD, but I would move it around a bit, and it's about the more you network, the more you increase your possibilities or the probability of getting a job after a PhD. So the first step is very simple. Have one conversation with someone you don't know who is working in a different field or the same field. Then make that connection and ask one genuine question like, oh, I came across this job position. What do you think? Would my skill fit in that? And so many times LinkedIn posts the jobs which have the certain criteria, but some criteria you don't meet, or some criteria is very important, but we don't know if we meet that criteria or not. So it's all about asking others. And in job hunting after a PhD, it's not really about applications, but it's about building relationships that can shape your future. And this is the only advice I keep getting from everyone I talk to. So I really want to pass it on. Network, network, and network your way to job hunt success. And thank you very much for your time and listening to me.
Thank you very much. That was really comprehensive. I'm wondering if Chloe's worried now because you guys covered a lot of things that Chloe was going to cover as well. I'm interested to ask what do you think are the biggest mistakes that PhD kind of graduates have made. I mean, I don't know if you've started looking for jobs yet. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that people make?
I think the first one is not networking. So when I was in my PhD initial years, I went to conferences, but I never talked to people, what they do, where are they from. And I just went there, presented my poster and came back home and did not ask any questions. And the second one is just preparing my CV and cover letter and just submitting it off. So whenever I prepare my CV and cover letter now, I always get it reviewed from 2 to 3 people who are working in an industry, so that I'm not using academic jargons, but rather using the industry jargons.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I know that as well, one of the biggest challenges could be, of course, is knowing where to look for a job. I mean, I've spoken to I have a few PhD students who are in a little mentoring group that I work with, and other than looking, I think many haven't had to apply for jobs so far. They had to apply for their PhD, but if you went straight from undergrad to master's or undergrad to PhD, it might be the first time actually looking for a job beyond one that was maybe research adjacent. And some of the common places that I've seen PhD students end up working are the university job boards are a pretty good place to be looking. Yeah. Obviously, if you're in the UK, jobs.ac.uk. If you're also in the UK, there's the Times Higher Education jobs as well. And if you're international, Nature have a jobs board, the BNA have a jobs board, as does IBRO and other places, where if you're thinking, more European or globally. That's for kind of research jobs. But I think following individual institutions, particularly in the US, what I found, I don't know if you've been considering the US, or I don't know, where are you looking at the moment? Are you mostly staying in Europe?
Yeah, I'm looking in Europe more.
I guess fewer people are looking at the US at the moment, given the political landscape. But in the US, it's different again, because I think what you see is fewer places that curate all the jobs into one place. I know iStart and Alzheimer's Association have job boards as well, but it's individual institutions. So you really do have to put in some kind of internet legwork and go to every institution that you might be considering working for, even in the UK as well, or US, across Europe. Every one of those will have a jobs website, and then you just sign up for the alert newsletters. It does mean that your email does look a bit like a spam box for quite some time, but a lot of jobs still get advertised through that way. We'll move on and talk a little bit more about places to find jobs afterwards, but I'll invite Chloe now. Let's
see if this works.
Just in case I'm also stealing what you're going to talk. I'm going to talk this all out and then
there is a good amount of overlap. Very complimentary, I'd say.
That's perfect.
Okay. All fun. My window is gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my entire screen. Oh, hang on. It's not. Let's see. Is it maybe this one? I'm going to share a window that might be wrong. So tell me if you're not seeing what you expect to see. What are you seeing?
Nothing right now.
Okay, fine. I'm going to share my entire window, so you're going to see yourself, and then hopefully then you won't. Oh, it's fun. Can you see my screen now?
Infinite mirroring. We can see my slides though.
Oh, I can see a slide. Why are you not seeing?
We can see the
infinite.
Now, yeah. Maybe did you? I can share a trick on how to do this. Other places to potentially look are, of course, if you're wanting to stay in research but not be a researcher, the NIHR, Alzheimer's Research UK, Alzheimer's Association, or all the kind of big charities and funders of research quite often advertise jobs on their websites that don't find their way through into big listings. Yes, we've got that. So do sign up those as well. We've got that now, Chloe. So
you can
over
see my
to
screen
you.
and you can hear me. So I'm assuming I can't see you, so you'll have to shout at me if something goes wrong. Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, there actually is quite a lot of complementary sort of advice here between what I'm going to say and what Ishita is saying. So basically, preparation is the key. So starting at the end of your PhD, you're going to be sort of at a disadvantage. It's worth being as prepared as possible. Okay, so just a bit about me and some caveats. So I am a psychologist by training. I did all of my training at the University of Edinburgh. In terms of jobs that I've had, they've been very academic. I've done academic research roles and I've done academic teaching roles. I am hoping to give quite general advice here, but it's worth bearing in mind that I have no experience in industry. So all of my roles have been academic. I've also been very much based in Scotland. So some of the advice I might give might not be as applicable to other areas, but I'll try my best to be as general as possible. In terms of sources of advice, it's very much my personal experience, as well as the experience of people that I've been friends with and peers, as well as sort of sitting on hiring committees for postdoc type roles. But what I want to make clear in terms of the advice I'm giving is that this is the things that work for me and what didn't work so well for me. That doesn't necessarily mean that what worked for me will necessarily work for you. There's no real one career path. There's no one right way to do this. So basically, feel free to ignore any of the advice I give today. So in terms of thinking about when you need to be thinking about preparing for applying for jobs. Now, what I'm not going to do today is talk about actually filling in applications, writing applications. That's something you need to do at the very near the end of your PhD, because typically if you're going into a role that requires a PhD, then you need to have either submitted or be very close to submitting your PhD. So that's something that you need to do at the end of your PhD. But what I'm really going to focus on today is talking a bit more about thinking about what you can do throughout your entire PhD that will help you, that will benefit you when you come to applying for jobs after your PhD. And in terms of timing, the earlier the better. So my genuine advice is that day one of your PhD, you should be thinking about what you want to do after your PhD. What are you hoping to get out of your PhD that will help you to get where you want to go? So one of the things I think people forget about is that a PhD is actually a training program. It's an opportunity for you to develop new skills, to become an expert in a specific area, and then thinking about using those skills in your career later on. And that skill development actually takes a lot of time. It can take literally years to become proficient in these kinds of skills. But your PhD is an excellent opportunity for you to develop skills that you'll then use in your career. So it's worth sitting down in your first year of your PhD and thinking, actually, what do I want to do after my PhD? What skills do I need to develop now during my PhD for me to be able to get a job after my PhD? And the reason I suggest doing this within your first year is that there's usually scope. Okay, the project, the general aims of your project, your PhD project might be sort of set in stone, but the actual ins and outs of what you do in your PhD might be adaptable. And therefore it's worth sitting down and speaking to your supervisors and saying, actually, I'd be quite interested in doing this later on. Can we think about how to build this into my PhD so that I can develop these skills now? So if your PhD supervisor hasn't sort of already started talking to you about potential careers and directions and what to think about, do raise this with them at the earliest possible opportunity. I also think it's when you start a PhD, you often actually don't really know the sort of options that are available to you, what actual careers are available to you. So it's worth speaking to your supervisors, other mentors, other people in and around your university to try and get a better understanding of actually what opportunities are available for you and what sort of career paths can you take. So the next important thing to think about is actually what kinds of career do you want to go into? What jobs do you want to get after your PhD? So typically we think about it in terms of a research role, a teaching role, something in industry, or something else entirely. And during your PhD is a really good time to start thinking about what are your key priorities. So it's worth thinking about, there will be parts of your PhD that you love, and there'll be parts you absolutely hate, unfortunately. And it's worth sort of thinking about what are the things I really enjoy, and how can I sort of think about careers in that area? So when I was doing my PhD, I very quickly knew that I wanted a career in research because I love learning and I love being able to sort of come up with my own research questions and then go away and spend literally months and years learning about that area and then answering a question. So research just seemed like a good choice for the things that I very much enjoyed and the skills that I had. And also you want to then think about, okay, if I want to go into this particular area, so you want to go into a career in industry or something, what skills do you need to develop? So that's, again, thinking about doing it early so that you can use your PhD to develop the skills that you perhaps don't currently have, so that you've got time to be able to do that. And the other thing to think about is, what are your priorities in life, right? So some jobs require you to work longer hours. Some jobs require you to travel a lot. Some jobs pay more than others. So you need to think about, well, actually, what are my priorities in life, and how does a job that I'm going to go on to do fit into those priorities? And you kind of see, or what I've seen from various people I've worked with over the years, is you get sort of two groups of people. You get people that are like, okay, I think I want to go into, say, a career in research. I'm not really fussed about what area. Maybe I've done a degree, a PhD in psychology, so some sort of psychology research. So there's quite general. They don't have specific aims. They just know that they have an area that they want to go into. In which case I'd sort of recommend developing more general skills throughout your PhD. So that in psychology, for example, the sort of most general skills you can probably get are analytical skills, being able to code or use complex modeling, things like that. That would be applicable to a wide range of skills, a wide range of jobs. Whereas other people have very concrete ideas and they know exactly what they want to do. And I, to be honest, was in that latter category. I had a very specific idea of what I wanted to do, specific topic, area, group that I wanted to work with. And to some extent, that's a little bit more challenging, because the time when you're looking for a job and the time that there are jobs in that area don't always align. So that can be a bit problematic, but you can do things to sort of help prepare for that. So here you want to focus more on specific skills. So, for example, if there's a group that use specific techniques, maybe imaging or certain things like that, then you can develop those skills during your PhD. And this comes back directly to what Ishita was talking about. Networking here is so important. You want to reach out and make these connections early. So if you have a group that you really want to work with during your PhD, reach out to them. Trying to arrange a meeting with them, tell them what it is that you like about their research, what you're doing, and why you think you'd be a good fit for them. Maybe go visit the lab, if possible, even try and make collaborations during your PhD with them, so that by the time you're actually coming to look for a job, you can say, look, I really do want a job with you and I'm perfect for this role because I've already worked with you, I've already shown my dedication to this area of research. So that building those relationships and building those networks throughout your PhD is particularly important. Another consideration when you're thinking about what you want to do after your PhD is, well, where do you want to do it? On the one hand, when you are as skilled as you are at the end of your PhD, you kind of have opportunities to travel anywhere in the world. If you wanted to use your PhD and your job to be able to travel and to go to lots of places, then you're at a really unique opportunity to do that. To some extent, that's actually harder, because how do you choose where to go? There's almost too many options. So again, it's about reaching out to people at those institutions or at those industries in those locations to make sure that this is actually what you want. But one of my biggest bugbears about especially academic research is this idea that you have to move around to sort of prove that you're really dedicated to a career in academia. To me, that's entirely elitist, and it should be possible to be able to stay within one place. And that was where I was in my situation. I knew that I had to, if I wanted a career in academia, I had to stay in Scotland. I had to stay in central Scotland, in fact. And to some extent, that does limit your options. It might mean that you have to make sideways moves or go to jobs that are perhaps not ideal, or sometimes backwards moves as well. But in theory, it should be possible to have a career in any area without having to move about. Okay, so just to finish up, here's some top tips in terms of how to prepare for job hunting post-PhD. So what I'd recommend is setting aside time regularly to work on and think about your career ambitions. Do this from the beginning of your PhD and continually throughout your PhD, thinking about, are you on track? Are there any skills that you might need to develop now? Always have an up-to-date CV ready. I cannot tell you how much time this will save you and how beneficial it will be. So for example, if you're at a conference and you're doing your networking and you meet somebody, it's quite good to be able to just send an email the next day as a follow-up to be like, it was really good to chat to you. Here's my CV. Here's the things I've been working on. So always having an up-to-date CV will just be a really beneficial thing for you. Keep up to date on job vacancies. So Adam was talking about some of the places you can find out about these. The Dementia Researcher website and newsletters are particularly good for that as well. So even when you're not looking, so even in your first and second year of your PhD, I'd recommend looking up job vacancies for the sort of roles you're going to go into, and then look at the sort of desirable and essential criteria, see what you've already met, see what you will meet by the end of your PhD, and then trying and identify gaps that perhaps you need to work on. Giving yourself time to work on these is going to be much better than when you're sitting down to apply for a job thinking, oh, actually, I don't have that. So it's all about being as prepared as possible. And also make sure you're continually and repeatedly getting help and advice from various different peers and mentors. People are usually very open and find enjoyable sort of talking about themselves. So it might be worth going out, taking somebody out for coffee and asking them what their career path was like, how they got to where they got to. If you've got friends who've been successful in the job market recently, ask to see their CVs, their cover letters, their job applications, so you can get a good idea of what a successful job application looks like. And absolutely get feedback on applications. So I know that when I applied for my job recently, I had about a dozen people that read my cover letter, parts of my cover letter, or they looked at my slides for my presentation, or I asked them questions. It's you need somebody that can be very helpful to get other people's perspective, to sort of identify perhaps where you're not being clear, or sometimes even just to be able to sell sort of skills that you have better. Sometimes other people are better at that than you are. So make sure you're getting help and support, and return the favor as well. It can be very sort of rewarding to help others in their career. So I'll stop there. I hope this was beneficial. As I said, it's my personal experience, so that may be different from yours. But I look forward to the various conversations.
Thank you, Chloe. That was really great and comprehensive. Again, I picking up on a point you made there about looking for a job. I suppose once you've decided what you want to do, and this also picks up on a question we've had in the chat there from Jack, about reaching out to people. I had this conversation with somebody recently. Ishita, do come back as well, about finding jobs. So they've been looking for a job for a few months, and they got a very fixed view as to what they wanted, and it wasn't coming up, and they were kind of like, well, what can I do? And I don't know, have you been in the situation of have you reached out to people individually? I always feel, I don't feel you should ever say, hey, have you got a job? Which I think is unlikely, because if they did it, well, certainly in this country anyway, it's going to be advertised, but they might have in the future.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'd suggested was that, for example, keeping an eye on the studies that have been funded recently. Yeah. So charities particularly are very keen to talk about, hey, we've just funded this. Mm-hmm. And they'll say who it's going to be and where it's going to be. And so you go, ooh, so there's a good chance that they might be recruiting research assistants, or they might be recruiting a postdoc coming up. So reaching out to those people to say, hey, could you keep me in mind? Or as you'd said, just saying, hey, this is me, not a huge email, just a, hey, I'm a PhD student, I'm supervised by this person, I've been doing this, I'm thinking about my next career stage. It'd be great if you could spare me 20 minutes for a chat. I'd love to get some of your advice, and park it there. Even if this is somebody you're hoping to be a future employer, park it there, because then they're more likely to say, sure, I can give you 20 minutes. And at least they become aware that you exist then. And when something does come up, they might reach out and say, hey, we've had a job come up, or they can, oh, I might have something coming along. What other creative ways beyond adverts have you both found to find the job you're looking for? Chloe, why don't you go first?
I guess I would email people and say, do you have a job? I think there's a way to do it. So it's kind of what I did to get my first job, if I'm honest. I did send an
Let's
email.
hear about that. How did you do that?
So I mean, this was this was way before my PhD. Basically, there was a group who I wanted to work with. So I've always been fairly confident. I know exactly what area of research I wanted to go into, and I applied for a job with them and never got it. And I ended up emailing the sort of hiring manager and said, I didn't get this job. What advice would you give for next time? And they gave me some advice, and I went away and did that. And then about a year later, I emailed them again and saying, actually, do you have anything coming up? And that was a really useful thing because they just got a bunch of funding, and we know how slow everything is. So sometimes they know there's a job coming up, but they're not advertising it for a few months. And that was really useful because they were like, well, there's actually a role coming up in a few months that might be particularly useful to you. So I knew there was a job coming up, and I applied for that job and then ended up getting it. So I think there is a way to sort of reach out and say, look, I am looking for jobs in the future. But it's not a case of do you have any jobs coming up? It needs to be you do this kind of stuff. I think that's really interesting. I do this kind of stuff. I think I might fit in your lab well. So it's about personalizing it as well. I think that's really important, demonstrating you know your stuff. And actually, the other, you asked about how creative ways to find jobs. It's not creative at all, but the way I've found jobs in the past is social media. I have to be honest, I'm really sad about how much of a bin fire Twitter is these days, because I found that one of the most helpful ways of finding jobs previously was Twitter. But I guess LinkedIn is another example.
Yeah, I agree on social media. It's a shame because I think that amazing community that it had become, particularly in science and research, has been diminished in the last 18 months, particularly. I agree. If you're, I think, have never been a big social media person, there are probably a few places to go now, aren't they? So Blue Sky, I think a lot of people left Twitter and went to Blue Sky, but haven't necessarily got into the habit of posting very regularly there. Twitter is still alive, albeit not what it once was, and LinkedIn. They're the main places you do seem to find jobs being posted now, if at all. But I think doing that, you can't get around doing the legwork. I think looking at the papers that have been published, Google Scholar and things like that, to say, right, let's look at all the papers that have been published in the last 6 months, maybe in an area. And that might give you a list of people to look at the authors of those papers, go away and do some cyber stalking to see if they have if they have social media presence, then you can at least follow those. What about you, Ishita? Have you found any creative ways? Have you been going beyond the job boards?
No, I agree with Chloe that social media is very helpful. And one thing that also I do is letting your network know that you are looking for the job. So if something comes across their LinkedIn or their mind, or if they are talking to someone, they always ping me with the job post, or hey, I found this, maybe it's helpful for you and relevant for you since you are looking for it. That helps me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that, and as I said before, I think going to the individual institutions that you're interested in and going to their careers pages and signing up for, you can usually set an alert with some keywords and things, set some alerts up and keywords, and just, it means putting in the legwork to start with for probably a whole day of Googling and signing up. But then overnight you wake up in the morning and hopefully the jobs are just there in your inbox waiting for you to come to you. Also, as well, places like, if you're in the UK, I know it's different, but NHS jobs brings together lots that aren't just clinical roles as well. There are lots of roles there. We've got some questions. Let's take some audience questions instead of thinking of mine.
Is it fine if I may take your
You've
leave?
got to go. I know. Sorry, Ishita's been very great in sticking with us, but is feeling incredibly unwell with a cold. So we will let you go. And Chloe, we can handle it, can't we? Thank you so much for coming out. I know you're not feeling well. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jack says, what other methods can be used to speak to people? His LinkedIn Premium account is running out soon. And you can send 5 personal invites a month. Been doing some LinkedIn learning courses. I didn't know that they were those. So for anybody watching, maybe go have a look on LinkedIn. So yeah, go have a look on LinkedIn as well. So I think we've covered a few of those, haven't we? I think
you can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned email either. I think LinkedIn is good for identifying sort of potential collaborators, like when it does that, like suggestions of people that or sort of friends of friends in your network. It's good to identify people, but I think there's the good old-fashioned emails where you can sit down and spend the time sort of drafting it is quite important.
Yeah. And finding out who to email in the first place, I think we've talked about, which is kind of looking at papers published in, if you're wanting to stay in academia, papers published in recent areas, or people with certain job titles in organizations. LinkedIn is a great way to potentially find the right person, but then you can follow it up with an email as well. And then, of course, those individual institution websites, and then big websites like our own Dementia Researcher. We have a job board that we post on, and academics, jobs.ac.uk and NHS jobs, but elsewhere in Europe you probably are more reliant upon individual institution websites. There's a question.
An important thing to add to that is that you should be rely on your supervisors as well, right? So if it's especially if it's in the area you did your PhD in, then they should be knowledgeable and they should be helping you. But as part of their role, it's not just for the PhD. They should be thinking about how to how you can advance your career as well. Beyond PhD. So they should be thinking about their contacts and who they can put you in touch with as well. So do get that advice from your supervisors as well.
Absolutely. And the team. I mean, if you're at a university, there are people in the university that should be there to help with that particular role. And that's where I think also having multiple mentors for different purposes is quite useful, isn't it? So you've got your kind of research skills kind of mentor, but it's a particular skill set, I think, is job hunting. So don't be afraid to pull on somebody who's not necessarily in that same space as you for that advice. Coaching as well. We did a salon session on coaching recently, and I think coaching's getting some coaching, particularly on things like interview tips and job applications, can be particularly useful from a coaching perspective. Very particularly.
And that's another reason why I think one of the best things you can do is sort of offer other people advice. So if somebody comes to you saying, I'm applying for this job, this is my CV, this is my cover letter, I think actually reading other people's applications is a really good way to be like, oh, that's good. I'm not doing that. That's different from what I'm doing. Or, oh, this doesn't work at all. Sometimes it's easier to spot what works and what doesn't work in other people than it is in yourself.
Absolutely.
So in addition to being a nice thing to do, to offer other people advice, it's actually a fantastic way to learn.
Really good. Right, so we've got some questions. What's the best way of recovering connections from previous conferences? I presented at a few conferences, spoken to people afterwards, but I finished my PhD a while ago now and I feel stuck. That's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, that's where I said this just after AIC, those immediate follow-ups are so important. What advice do you have for that one on recovering those connections?
I mean, reach out to them anyway. Later on, I actually, there's somebody I'm collaborating with at the moment who we had a conversation with 5 years before, and I followed up and was like, we had a conversation 5 years ago. You might not remember this, but this is what we said, and we're now working together. So I think the work that it's worth reaching out to these people again. Like if you reached out to them immediately afterwards, then they'll probably remember you. They might, they'll know that you were, say, doing your PhD. So you can now be like, actually, I'm now finished my PhD and here's where I'm at. So I think try and reach out anyway. I feel like the worst they can do is ignore you.
And on that front, this is where I think as well, don't rely upon necessarily the kind of social media platforms messaging service as a way of getting in touch with people, because You know, if you're sending somebody a DM through LinkedIn or through X or Blue Sky or something like that, there's absolutely no guarantee that they ever check those places, that they got through, that they managed through the spam. I think absolutely trying to find their email addresses and email is a far more reliable way of contacting. Don't just try and slide into their DMs. I think there is also as well on those people on social media, I found, I don't know about you, but when somebody kind of constantly likes the content that if you post content quite regularly and people like it, inevitably, I think I'll eventually, after a few, go look at it. Who is this person that's liking my posts? I don't recognize them. And I think liking a lot of their content, I mean, not in a weird way, liking stuff that they posted years ago, but like the most recent posts, eventually, I think they'll become a little bit interested as who's done that and will look at you. And so then when you do email them afterwards, they'll recognize you a little bit more, perhaps. We had another question here. How do you develop missing specific skills? For example, I worked with the EEG data during my PhD, and I'd like to get more fMRI and MEG data as roles, but I've applied for. But I've asked about shadowing and volunteering, but the responses have been limited. What about the missing skills?
So that can be tricky if your PhD doesn't have, if you don't have the capacity within your PhD to learn that specific skill. I think there's two things I'd sort of pick up on there. There's one would be like try and get a role in that area. So that would be the first thing to do, even if it's not quite, if it's in a like you would be doing this kind of using this kind of skill, but not in the research area you want to go into. It might still be worth doing that sort of sideways move to get the experience. But also, it's about sort of selling the skills you do have as showing that you would be good at something. So I think what I think people forget is, okay, we talked about PhD being a training platform, but nobody thinks that when you finish your PhD, you're an expert in everything. You continue to learn at every stage. And that's exactly what postdoc type roles are about. You're continuing to learn, develop skills before you become, say, an independent researcher or whatever you're else going to do. So you could be like, I have EEG experience, therefore I'm going to apply for roles in fMRI because it shows there's some overlap. It shows that you're interested in this area, that you have potential to learn. So it's about selling the skills you do have as evidence of the skills you're going to develop. So I guess it's a framing thing almost.
I think you've done all the right thing there by trying to reach out and ask for those for those shadowing experiences or for some internship and things. I think that what you've done there is definitely right. I think the other thing you could potentially do is just it's possible to become very knowledgeable on a topic without ever having done it. I mean, how many people know lots about football but don't actually play football? Right. And I think if you become very widely read on fMRI or MEG data, you read all the papers on it, you become, watch all the YouTube videos, consume as much knowledge as you can on a topic, then at least in your application, you can say, whilst I haven't got hands-on, I'm very knowledgeable on this area. Would you ever just fudge over something in an application? Would you just fail to mention it? Do you think that is to your advantage or disadvantage in terms of you want to get through the door and get an interview? Do you think you're more or less likely if you're honest and saying, I don't have experience in this, or do you just fail to answer the question until you get the interview? What would you do?
I don't think I'd ever in an application say I don't have experience. No. I would never say that. I would never be like, I don't have experience with this. I would frame it as this would be a fantastic opportunity to learn, which is the same as saying I don't have experience. But yeah, so it's all about framing it. I think don't lie because you will get found out. Definitely don't lie. But I think there is just a way of framing it. So you would be like, here's the stuff I do, the experience I do have, and here's the opportunity that I would have to learn this particular thing. Don't explicitly say I can't do it.
And if you can read around a topic, at least you can, you can talk knowledgeable about it. You can say you understand that these are the challenges in this area, or this is why it's exciting. That
demonstrate your knowledge. Yeah.
Exactly. The next question was, I've asked about showing I'll have an introductory chat with somebody in technology and engineering, I hope again. Okay. How good is the idea to opt for a research assistant role initially after completing your PhD if a postdoc or other suitable position is not available? What's your thoughts on that, Chloe?
Sometimes you have to pay the bills. And so a job is better than no job, right? So a job is, yeah, if the options are you want the job, but if it's a choice between the job and no job, then a job is better than that.
I think
So I think I think it's some people. The other thing is, I think we need to remember that we're going to be doing this until we're like 60, 70, right? We've got a very long time. I think we're always in a rush to get to where we need to be. But I think a research assistant role, if that's all that's available, and then it's absolutely a useful thing. And again, use it to try and find a skill that you don't have, so that when you get the next job, you can be like, oh, I actually learned to do that in my last role. So I think sometimes it can feel like a failure, but I also think it's really difficult sometimes to line up exactly the job you want at exactly the time you need it. So yeah, sometimes bills need to be paid.
And I know, I mean, somebody I work with has done exactly this. So finished their PhD in Scotland, couldn't find the ideal postdoc they were looking for, really got to a point, this was kind of complicated by visa issues and things like this, and needed a position, and took a position that did, I think they were concerned that it felt like a step back at the time, that they were like an extremely well qualified research assistant, but actually off the back of that they got to work in an entirely new area with kind of brain tissue and things that they hadn't done before. It gave them an entirely bunch of new skills, and actually that resulted in that when a postdoc did come up in that lab, they were the automatic promotion into that, because they should have already really been working as a postdoc. Although I should also say it's probably more competitive trying to get a research assistant job right now than it is a postdoc job. There are fewer research assistant jobs coming up, and the ones that are coming up are hugely oversubscribed. And looking at Dementia Researcher website and the stats, anytime we post a research assistant job on our website, they are the most viewed things that we post in a given week. So it's, even then, it's quite competitive, almost to the point you might need a PhD to get a research assistant job, which I know. It's kind of tragic, but yes, so not a big disadvantage there.
I'm going to close my blinds because I'm being blinded here, but
no, that's okay. The next question is, I found there's a little standardization in job titles in universities. Research assistants and associates are often interchangeable. Yes, they are. So that's another thing to be aware of if you're job hunting. Don't just bypass research associate jobs, or look at everything and read the detail. We just posted some jobs this week which were for research associates in dementia, and then you looked and they're looking for architects and designers, and you wouldn't have jumped to that conclusion. I certainly didn't until you got into the job description. So do look. Have you, this is like that, when you find that thing on eBay that's been really badly described, and you land that kind of perfect thing that was hot, that never got the bids it should. I feel like it's the same with jobs. Don't necessarily just search, scroll through and click on every one, because they're not always very well described. Have you found that, Chloe?
Yeah, you'll find that it's either a case of, like, so what we find at our university is that there's specific job titles that everybody gets, right? So if it's a grade 7 post, you're a research assistant. If you're a grade 8 post, then it's a postdoctoral researcher or whatever. But that doesn't tell you anything about what the actual role is. So you do have to go and click into it. And the other problem with these sort of like alerts is that sometimes you'll get jobs that are just so inappropriate for you. So you do kind of have to sludge through and read them all. And usually when you click on a job description, though, there's a little like paragraph at the top that is a bit more specific. So that's the bit you need to find. So there is a bit of work to be able to find the the right job.
And I wouldn't bypass anything that says research fellow, assuming that that's more senior either, because some of the descriptions I've read recently that are listed as research fellow were not at all senior posts. It's just the job title that they used in that institution.
Exactly, that's important. So I think different institutions use slightly different terminology for the same thing. It's a bit like having a lecturer versus an assistant professor in the US. It's the same job, but different terminology. And that happens even sort of within the UK across different institutions. They describe the same thing as a different term. So it's worth being aware of that, and that sometimes there isn't, some people use assistant, some people like postdoctoral research assistant, other people use research associate. They basically mean the same thing. So don't get too hung up in terminology.
We haven't spent a lot of time talking about this, but as we got from the stat earlier, not everybody wants to stay in academia. I would strongly encourage you to do so, because I think everybody should work in dementia research. It's brilliant. But there just aren't enough jobs for everybody at certain career stages. We've got that awful funnel, haven't we, that there aren't enough research fellowships and postdocs for everybody that's doing a PhD. How can someone demonstrate those transferable skills, do you think, from a PhD to those non-academic roles? How have you had that experience?
So, I mean, I'm very much worked in academia, so I don't have a huge amount of industry, but I've had friends that are industry experience, but I do have friends that have made that jump. And I guess I think from their experience, getting that first industry role is the hard bit. The jump from academia to industry seems to be particularly difficult. So it is about framing it again. It's about realizing, even if you've got this really niche sort of technique that you use as part of your PhD, it's about sort of how to sell that as a more transferable skill. So you're saying, I learned this really complex thing in my PhD, and then I used it to address this question. So that's about showing that you can learn these complex things and use them and apply them. So I think it is about trying to figure out, how do you sell the skills you have as being transferable? But it's hard. I think that first jump, I think once you're in industry, it's easier to move around roles, but it's that first jump that's particularly difficult. And there's some really good, so coming back to social media, not that I can remember any of their names, but there's some really, really good people on social media, LinkedIn, like Twitter previously, but I'm sure they're in other places now, who document what they did, how they jumped from academia to industry. So there are resources out there. I'm not the best.
There are. I was going to say exactly the same thing. We've covered this, I think, in a few webinars and blogs and things in our website. If you have a search on the keyword on industry, I think you'll find some content there that might be useful. There's quite a few YouTube tutorials and workshops and things with very specific examples on how, comparing an academic CV to a industry one. So you can, when they say project management skills, for example, you can pick out, or event organization, there are things you can pick out from your CV that you can draw that upon. Places to look as well, if you're not interested in academia. So obviously, pharmaceutical and biotech companies are the obvious places that commonly, particularly if you've worked more in fundamental science, healthcare providers and policy organizations are other places to look, not necessarily in dementia, but in aged care or in other diseases. You only have to see how many people work at Alzheimer's Research UK or Alzheimer's Society or Alzheimer's Association that jump from disease area to disease area. They move around, and I think so don't just consider dementia related areas, but healthcare providers, policy organizations, non-profits and advocacy groups, consultancy and research services. I've known a few PhD students recently who've jumped across to scientific writing, particularly for pharmaceutical companies, but also for journals and things, and are doing freelancing there. The ever popular option, of course, is science communications and publishing, which again, lots of people from our area, and then go into that. And then also, if you've been working in data science or something, I've seen people moving across to financial sector and insurance agencies and data analytics roles. So those are places to look.
Identifying the skills you have and how they would be applicable in other areas. And that also comes back to learning what other areas are there. So that's why I think it's important throughout, like very early on, to chat to people about what career options are out there, because there are a lot, but sometimes we just don't know about them.
I can't believe the hour is up. This hour has gone, I think, the quickest out of all of our webinars so far. So I've got to wrap up now. As ever, we asked our friendly AI friend on Dementia Researcher only content to give us 10 top tips for looking for a job after your PhD. And this is what it came up with. Number 1, start planning your career while you're still finishing or even midway through your PhD. Chloe very rightly picked up on that in her talk. Treat job hunting as a project. Set goals, timelines, track applications, keep a spreadsheet of what you've applied for, when, having all that in there, and keep your applications on file as well, and for each individual one, because it'll save you time when you find that perfect job and then you suddenly go, oh no, though it closes tonight. Having something already ready on file that you can quickly tweak to apply might mean that you don't pass up opportunities just because of short deadlines. And deadlines are getting super short. I think because there are so many people applying for some of these postdoc and research assistant jobs, we are seeing jobs advertised at the moment with less than a week's notice. Now, I know that's usually a bad sign because you think, oh, they already know who they want to apply. But I think increasingly it's because they're getting really overwhelmed with applications. Amanda Heselgrave told me at UCL, the biomarker factory there, that their last research assistant job had over 120 applications, which is why they don't need to leave this open for a month. And in the US particularly, I think the UK is going down this route where they'll say, advertised until filled. And so there is no deadline anymore. A job might suddenly vanish, even though it's a week before its deadline, because they just got too many applications. So don't delay. Quick applications as soon as you find out about them. Sorry, I should be quicker in getting through these. Number 3, translate your PhD skills into language that non-specialist employers will understand. We've seen tips on that we talked about earlier. Build and maintain a professional network, both online and in person. We've talked about that. Number 5, explore roles outside academia earlier, even if you think you want to stay. Number 6 is customize every CV and application to highlight and fit with the job. Do treat that person specification as a kind of tick list when you're writing your cover letter. It makes it really easy for reviewers to go, yeah, tick, 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 when they're scoring applications. Number 7, prepare stories that demonstrate your problem solving and resilience and leadership. Number 8, learn from rejections. Use feedback where possible to refine your approach, although getting feedback on job applications is increasingly less likely, but that's where your mentors and things can help you, as Chloe rightly pointed out. Look after your well-being. Job hunting can be stressful and draining. Get plenty of sleep, drink lots of water, take exercise, the usual things you'll have had to do to get through your PhD anyway. And number 10, keep an open mind. The right role may not be what you originally imagined. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thank you to the incredible Dr. Chloe Fawns-Ritchie. I'm Adam Smith. This has been the Dementia Researcher Salon. We'll be back again next Wednesday. And this is where I always do this. I always fail to check what next week's is. But we are definitely back next Wednesday with another Salon webinar. And at the moment, we're also looking for people who might be interested. We're going to pause the Salon webinars in October and November and have a debate series, which will happen every 2 weeks. If you're interested in coming along and debating some of the hottest topics, is amyloid hypothesis taught us all we need to know? Is there anything more to learn? Should papers only have 5 authors? Should research funding be decided by lottery once it's been decided as fundable? These are all topics that we might be debating. And if you'd like to come down on one side or another, take a look at our website, on the community's website in the news section. There's a link there on how to join that. We will be back in the salon for our next Wednesday, which is on Wednesday the 27th, talking about collaboration and how to make multidisciplinary teams work. But we'll also be here on Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a session with some of the iStart ambassadors who are going to give us an overview of all the plenary talks that were discussed at the AIC last month. So either of those sessions, do join us again next week. And in the meantime, thank you very much again, Chloe. And we'll see you next time in the salon. Thank you. Bye.